Hello everybody, welcome back to the James Lawrence Allcott channel. Now, there are games. And then there are games. And then there's Sheffield Hallam versus Sheffield Uni at Varsity, where we won 2-1 and I got man of the match and assisted both goals. I actually got Manager's Player of the Year that year actually as well, and Players Player of the Year. And then there's Man City versus Liverpool. A title decider, the people say. Maybe. I actually think, regardless of what happens here, actually, the games after, I think it'll be interesting to see the fallout, which is an amazing series that I do. It'll be amazing to see the fallout of how these teams play the week after. Anyway, the biggest question for me is Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola and their team selections. I don't think Klopp ever had to make a decision this difficult with 5 players vying for 3 positions in terms of that front 3 for Liverpool. In this video, we're going to have a look at the weaknesses and strengths of both teams and what I think Klopp and Pep Guardiola should do when it comes to team selection. I'll give my prediction at the end of the video as well, but this is a juicy one, guys. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I think you'll enjoy it. And maybe subscribe, and then if you don't enjoy it, unsubscribe. Really, really simple. If you could do me a favour, hit the like button. Let's see if we can get ourselves 3,000 likes on this one, on this huge game, the biggest game of the season, no doubt. So if we have a look at the table, it is so tight up there. They are Jamie Carragher spitting distance away from each other, and it's super tight. It's tighter than 2 nuns in a bath. What? Bit of blue for the lads. It is very tight here. As you can see, 73 plays 72 points. And it's been a fiercely contested rivalry over the last couple of years. Bit of background on the game. Coming into this fixture, Liverpool are the informed team in the Premier League. They haven't dropped a point since the 2nd of January. That was against Chelsea. Since then, they have won 10 matches on the spin in the Premier League. They've only conceded 2 goals along the way, which is something that I think we all don't think about a lot of the time. And I think I'm guilty of myself where I go, oh, the opposition had a good chance there. It's kind of the style of which Liverpool play. But that said, it's a style of play that actually keeps the goals out. Just 2 goals so far since that last draw against Chelsea. I think it was a 2-2 draw that game. Man City, on the other hand, have only won 3 of the last 5 games. Prior to that, they were on an exceptional run, to be fair to them, which is what got them that lead in the title race initially. Big wins in December, you'll remember, against Leeds United, Newcastle and Leicester City. They all feel a little bit far away these days, and actually this game comes in the middle of a very tough period for Man City. The next 3 fixtures for Man City are Liverpool, of course, in the Premier League, then Atletico Madrid in the Champions League, and then Liverpool in the FA Cup. So when we're talking of quadruples and triples and doubles and singles, it's all going to come down to this week, quite possibly. It is a defining week in the season for Man City. In terms of head-to-head, Man City drew this game last season. They won, of course, 4-1 at Anfield, and it was a 2-2 draw earlier in the season. And here is my favourite stat. Hit the like button if you enjoy this one. Pep and Klopp have both won 9 encounters each when facing each other. It just shows how close these 2 managers are when it comes to terms with their abilities as coaches. It's amazing that it's so tight, both in the league and between these 2. So how will both sides hurt each other? We actually did a video on this. Make sure you go and check it out. It was a video on the title race and who I thought would win it at the end of it. I won't reveal that. Go check that video out after this one. We put a lot of work in that one. Actually, you might enjoy it. But we highlighted these weaknesses, and we will kind of adhere to that when we're looking at which players should play, because this is a talking point in itself. Klopp has never had these kind of options. Never. Maybe in midfield he's had a few options, but in midfield, you know how they play, and it's about facilitating the front players, really, if we're honest. And I don't think those midfield options, again, with the style of play that Liverpool have, make that huge difference. In terms of the top end of the pitch, that's the cutthroat area, isn't it, of course? That's where you've got to have players who are ruthless, in form, and you've got to make the right selections. So for Klopp to have the players that he's got in terms of Diaz, Mane, Firmino, Jota, Salah, all vying for those spots, means that he's got to make the decision to either not overthink or not think enough. He might just go blasé with it and go with what we would expect. So let's be honest, we know this Liverpool squad, and I would imagine that this is what Jurgen Klopp does. This will be the team that he will play in this game. Matip, who didn't play in the game against Benfica, will come in. Van Dijk, of course. Robertson, of course. Fabinho sits, of course. Henderson, who again didn't play against Benfica, I think to keep him safe for this game. Alexander-Arnold, looks like there was no problems from that game at Benfica. You wonder if he was even injured, really, don't you? Sure he was. Salah, of course, is an absolute definite. Thiago, a definite as well on that left-hand side with his great vision, and he'll be crucial in terms of being able to play those quick passes to take players out of the game on the counter-attack. There's two areas where I have some problems. Mane and Jota. Now, this would be the obvious team that Klopp would pick. I'd be surprised if he didn't, but I wouldn't pick it. First things first, let's talk about Mane. I wouldn't pick Mane because I think you might actually get a little bit more out of him if he's angry. And you also have a player in Luis Diaz right now who is in unbelievable form. Now, I know Mane scored a goal, but Luis Diaz on that left-hand side has just been really, really good. And his driving runs, Luis Diaz's driving runs, have been as good as Mane's, but I think he's just got that zip right now. And I would play Luis Diaz ahead of Mane. And actually to wind him up. I think that would work. I really do. If you do want to go with Mane, I don't see a problem with it. It's not the end of the world. You're going to get those driving runs. And that's what's going to be so important. But the Jota decision then is another one. And I wouldn't play Jota. I'm not saying he's not an amazing footballer. But when it comes to skill set and when it comes to hurting Man City, I think Jurgen Klopp needs to be brave here and revert to something that has worked for him in the past when we're looking at the Champions League. But also when we look at what's worked for teams against Man City this year, this kind of tactic, utilising someone in a deep-lying forward position, is what Liverpool need. And that's not Diogo Jota. So if it was me, Alisson obviously in goal, you'd have Robertson. And also this is kind of when you haven't got the ball, because you're going to counter-attack if you're playing Man City. It's just generally how it works. Thiago's obviously going to be there. Van Dijk, Matip on this right-hand side. Alexander-Arnold obviously will come in. Henderson will play. Fabinho will sit. And then let's say Mane or Luis Diaz. I would go with Luis Diaz from the start, and I'd bring Mane on. Salah, of course, will start. And then I would play Firmino. The reason I would play Firmino is I think you need someone playing in that deep lying forward role. And when it comes to skill set, Diogo Jota is not that kind of player. Firmino is definitely that player. I think it helps Liverpool with the ball. I think it helps them without the ball as well. And again, if you think about Spurs, this is just Spurs with Kane, Kulusevski. Ooh, pressure's on here. Can he spell it? He can. And Son. And it worked so well against Man City. And if you go and watch that title race video, you'll see that we talk about getting in behind Cancelo and making him have to be that little bit more honest in terms of tracking back. Also with the two centre-backs, dragging someone out of position or playing it in behind. They don't always like to play that offside as diligently as Liverpool seem to be able to do it. And again, driving runs from the likes of Son and from the likes of Kulusevski. Playing Firmino just makes more sense than playing Diogo Jota. Now, Diogo Jota, you might want to play him on that left-hand side. I'm not sure if I would do that. I guess he is clinical, and that's a great part of how he plays, and crosses as well. He's been superb for them as well. But Diogo Jota is averaging 1.86 passes into the final third per 90 this season. Firmino, 2.24 passes in the final third. He's just more comfortable in that deep-lying forward, false nine role. Add to that the pressing. Now, Jota presses actually more than Firmino in the final third. 8.37 for Firmino, 9.36 per 90 for Jota. But in terms of the midfield, the middle third, he's averaging less. 10.2 for Firmino, 8.58 for Jota. There's also another reason why Firmino would be great, and that's without the ball, and I'll talk about that once I've gone through Man City. We'll show you every player that I would pick when it comes to these two teams, so stick around. So next up, we're talking about Man City. Again, you've got options, haven't you? You've got decisions to make, and I would make a bit of a rogue one here, and I think Pep Guardiola might just do the same as well. He made some big decisions in the game against Atletico Madrid, resting a few players. Foden was one that came on, and I expect him to start. But if you remember that game, the 2-2 game earlier in the season, Grealish played as the sort of false nine, and Foden stayed really high and really wide left. Now that kind of worked, but it didn't really work for Grealish. He didn't look comfortable in that position. But if we look at him recently against Burnley, I think Jack Grealish could be the answer here. alongside the two players that he will, and the combinations that he could provide both on the counter-attack and when Man City dominate the ball. You can see this is his heat map from the Burnley game. Of course, they're dominating the game like this. But what you do get with Grealish is someone who's happy to stay out wide. And the reason you want someone to stay out wide, and again, we speak about this in the title race video, is that with Alexander-Arnold pushing up and playing a bit more narrow, to utilise the width of the pitch, to get the ball there, will not only help him draw Henderson out and other players out of position, but also it would allow him to sort of bypass Alexander-Arnold and find someone like Phil Foden, who I would play in that false nine role, because what he did so well was work those channels. And you've got Matip up against Phil Foden one-on-one. That's very, very difficult for someone like Matip, because Phil Foden's electric and has unbelievable feet at the same time. The other great thing about Grealish is he's got a really lovely partnership with Bernardo Silva. So I would play Bernardo Silva in this game as well. Gundogan would be on the bench. I think he'd be a great player to bring on a little bit later down the line. But so here you have the two teams that I would play. These are the two teams that I would play, and these are the reasons why I would do it. So first of all, the reason I play Grealish is because if you've got someone who's going to stay out wide like that, what you can do then is stretch Alexander-Arnold, especially once they work the ball up the pitch. Henderson's going to have to do a hell of a lot of work. That's going to be really, really important. But if you can play with pace, and I think that's the thing that at times in the first half they didn't do that quickly enough. But if you can play with pace, use Cancelo and the brilliance that he provides, and then use Grealish out wide and try and attract Alexander-Arnold. What that does would create a little channel for someone like Bernardo Silva. Even if Henderson is able to track him, you still got to stop the run. And ultimately, Man City, I think, are at their most dangerous when they get to the byline. I think any team's at their most dangerous when they get to the byline here. And that's what Grealish, I think, would provide maybe that little bit more than someone like Raheem Sterling. Raheem Sterling will go at him, but Henderson is so diligent, he would be there as well to sort of double team Raheem Sterling, so to speak. I know Henderson's amazing. I know Henderson covers in really well, but I think you almost stand them still if Grealish stays there and sort of takes him on one-on-one and then able to create those passes there. And that little partnership with Bernardo Silva will be really, really useful. Actually, the other crucial thing with this is actually when Liverpool are going forward, and maybe if I just do it on this side, if you've got Henderson looking to press and help out, but Matip on this right-hand side, what will happen brilliantly is by Grealish staying that little bit wider as well at times when they do get the ball, or being able to take someone like Henderson out of the game from here instead of in that false nine role that he played earlier in the season. What I like is the possibility to allow someone like, I'm going to have to move them all down here, to allow someone like Foden, who would start in this false nine position, to zip out over here and to work the channels. I think previously when you had it like this, that didn't work as well for me. Because you had to get the ball to Grealish to then find him. And by that point, Liverpool worked so hard that you haven't been able to utilise this space here. I think by doing it the other way round, with what Grealish can provide and his ability to take a player out of the game, and Foden's energy out wide and electric pace, I think it's a better use for it. Maybe Raheem Sterling could do a similar thing, but I'd like to see Foden one-on-one up against Matip. If we go back, the other side of it, and I did tell you, didn't I? I did promise that Firmino would be a great shout in that position for another reason as well. So I do want to just explain that, because the way that Liverpool like to defend is quite narrow. And again, in that video, when we were talking about how you stop Man City from hurting the opposition, it comes from stopping the passing lanes for Rodri and stopping the ball being played into the likes of Foden and the likes of Kevin De Bruyne. From Man City's point of view, by the way, Mahrez, course starts for me, offers that width on the other side. You know that they like to offer up 5 options along the way, ideally. And De Bruyne, I always like De Bruyne in this channel, both for his crossing ability, but also his ability to sort of lurk in the back post as well, and just sort of come from the sort of blind side of a lot of defenders. It's very difficult, especially when you have a team that focuses on that left-hand side the way that Man City do. They will always be down this side. And to be honest, the bulk of the game will be played down this side because, of course, you've got Salah and Alexander-Arnold on that right-hand side, and Diaz is going to make those diagonal runs, as would Mane if he was the player to do it. But with Rodri, we've seen that if you allow Rodri to have the ball, but you stop the passing lanes, Firmino has a better understanding of that. Also, Firmino, I think, would concern Rodri more in terms of sitting in front of him, picking up the ball, or just to the side of him or behind him, and then taking him out of the game because he would play in that deep-lying forward role. And the final thing is, if he gets the ball and goes past Rodri, another thing that we spoke about in that video was about 3-on-3s or 3-on-2s. Now, Kyle Walker will always recover really well. But as we saw in that first game, if someone like Salah or Alexander-Arnold is able to get past Cancelo, who does like to push forward, if you can create those 3-on-3s, or if Firmino is able to nick the ball and they're able to break and, again, create a 3-on-3, maybe even a 3-on-2, that's going to be pretty potent for a team like them. The other final thing is that if he gets the ball, he actually keeps these two centre-backs honest because they're concerned if do they go, do they stay back, do they retreat? The answer is to retreat, but Firmino, of course, can drive with the ball. And he's just a bit better when it comes to that technical skill set. I love Jota. He's had an unbelievable season, but I just think Firmino would work that little bit better and just have a better understanding, allow Fabinho to drop that little bit deeper and to make this... and to make this area of the pitch that little bit more congested for Rodri and not allow those players to do what they want to do. I think it's going to be an absolutely amazing game, and I think it will come down to individuals because they're so well drilled. The work rate of these teams is so high that you're going to have a good day and beat the press and do something special to beat these two goalkeepers, to beat these two sets of centre-backs, defences. You know, both teams like to defend high up the pitch. So there is going to be space in behind. I think it's going to be an absolute belter of a game. Could be a draw, but I think we'll still enjoy ourselves watching it. In terms of who's going to win the game, do you know, I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and I think generally, you're always a bit stupid going against Man City because of just how dominant they are in games. That said, I've seen something really, really special in Liverpool in these last few games. And I know I went for Liverpool in the title. And I think, if I'm honest, I think it'll be a draw. Get off the fence, James! But if I had to pick someone, I think... oh my God, it's going to be a draw. It's definitely going to be a draw. Because Man City being at home is obviously incredibly useful. I don't think I've seen a team as durable as this Liverpool side right now. Salah struggling a little bit with form, but Man City being able to break teams down. And then you add this sort of the clash of styles. When it comes to the clash of styles, I think that suits just about Man City. Man City play against so few teams that come and have a go because they think they're hard enough. And that's what Liverpool will do, which should provide space for the likes of Foden, De Bruyne, Mahrez, and the rest of them. But these are two of the greatest football teams I've ever seen, honestly. And it is fine margins and mini moments. And it's just going to be unbelievable. An absolute belter. Let me know your predictions. Let me know what you think about my team selection. Would you play Firmino? Would you play Jota? Would you play Mane? Would you play Diaz for Man City? Would you play Grealish? Would you go with Raheem Sterling in a game like this? What does it need and who's the key man? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're trying to hit that like target of 3,000, so make sure you hit the like button as well on your way out. Lots of love. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next time.